My mother looked at me and said, "You were a mistake." That one sentence shattered something inside me, but I didn't know how far I'd go to prove her wrong. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Claire. I was 24, juggling 2 jobs just to pay the bills, living in a small apartment my father, Robert, barely noticed. My mother, Eleanor, never let me forget I wasn't the child she wanted. Every birthday, every family gathering, every word seemed designed to remind me I didn't belong. I remember the time she compared me to my younger brother, Max, praising him for everything while I felt invisible. That day, something inside me snapped. I decided I wouldn't let her words define me. I promised myself I would prove her wrong, not with anger, but with my actions. My best friend, June, noticed the change. She saw the fire in my eyes and helped me focus. I started working smarter, saving money, learning skills, and building a life my mother could never ignore. Every step I took, I imagined her shocked face, and it pushed me further. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried, feeling the sting of her betrayal, but each struggle made me stronger. The girl who she called a mistake was now standing tall, shaping her own future. And that night, everything would change. I was ready to show Eleanor that mistakes could grow into something no one could ignore. Growing up, I always felt like I was living in someone else's shadow. My mother, Eleanor, had this way of finding fault in everything I did, while my brother Max seemed to shine no matter what. Even when I tried my best, it was never enough. I learned early that her praise was reserved only for him, and I became invisible in my own home. I remember one birthday party clearly. I had spent weeks planning little decorations and helping set everything up, hoping maybe this time she would notice me. Instead, Eleanor chose that moment to humiliate me. In front of our family friends, she laughed at my dress, mocked my ideas, and made jokes about how I was clumsy and awkward. Everyone watched, and I felt my face burn with shame. That day, something inside me hardened. I realized she didn't see me as her child to nurture, she only used me as a contrast to Max. Even simple moments felt like tests I could never pass. If I spoke up, I was rude. If I stayed quiet, I was cold. Every compliment she gave to Max reminded me of my place in the family. I learned to shrink, to disappear, just to survive her words. But deep down, I knew I had to remember these moments. They were the fuel I would one day use, not to hurt others, but to make myself seen, respected, and finally untouchable by her cruelty. Those childhood betrayals were harsh lessons, shaping me into someone determined to never feel small again. Every slight, every embarrassing word she threw my way became a quiet promise: I would rise, and one day, she would see that her favorites were never the only ones capable of greatness. I was walking past the living room when I heard my mother talking on the phone. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then her words hit me like a punch. She was bragging to a distant cousin about how she never wanted me, how my existence had been a mistake she had to tolerate. I froze in the hallway, my chest tightening, my hands shaking. The words were meant to be private, but somehow I had become the punchline of her cruel joke again. For a moment, I felt the familiar sting of humiliation, the sharp reminder that I had never been enough for her. Anger bubbled up inside me, but this time it didn't come with tears. Something shifted. I realized that no one else would defend me. If I wanted to stop being her victim, I had to take control. I couldn't rely on luck or on anyone noticing my pain. That day, I sat quietly in my room, replaying her words over and over. Instead of breaking me, they sparked a determination I hadn't felt before. I started thinking about all the ways I could change my situation, all the small moves that could give me power over my own life. It wasn't about revenge yet, not the cruel kind, but about proving to myself that I mattered, that I could rise above her. For the first time, I felt a plan forming in my mind. I would no longer let her dismiss me, ignore me, or belittle me. I would take the steps to make her see that the girl she never wanted could still become unstoppable. That day, I promised myself I would act, and nothing would stop me from turning that humiliation into my strength. After that day, I knew I had to be smart. Anger alone wouldn't be enough. I needed a plan, something precise, something that could give me control. I began paying attention to every detail of my mother's life. Small habits, hidden routines, the way she managed money, the people she trusted, nothing escaped my notice. June noticed my quiet determination and offered to help. Together, we started piecing things together. We found patterns in how Eleanor controlled situations, how she spread gossip, and how she covered her mistakes with charm and lies. It was clear she had always relied on fear and manipulation to get her way. But the more we uncovered, the more I realized that every weakness she had could be turned into my advantage, if I was patient and careful. I learned about her hidden bills, the favors she owed, and the secrets she assumed no one would ever discover. I also started observing her social circle, the people who flattered her without question, and the lies she told to keep her reputation intact. Every small detail was a piece of the puzzle. I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. For the first time, I was taking the reins instead of waiting for life to happen to me. This wasn't about impulsive revenge, it was about strategy. Every choice I made now was calculated, every move considered. That period of observation and research gave me strength. It was empowering to see that I could understand her, predict her, and eventually outsmart her. I was no longer a passive bystander in my own life. I was becoming someone who could turn years of cruelty into a plan that she would never see coming, and I was ready to begin executing it. The night finally came when I could put my plan into action. Eleanor had invited our neighbors to a charity event, eager to show off her wealth and social status. I had spent weeks gathering details about her habits, how she loved attention, how she exaggerated her generosity, and how she thrived on admiration. I arrived quietly, blending in with the crowd, but I carried with me a few well-timed truths that would unsettle her carefully crafted image. When she began boasting about her charitable efforts, I casually mentioned facts she had assumed no one knew, little inconsistencies, forgotten donations, promises she had never kept. I delivered them calmly, almost conversationally, but the effect was immediate. Faces around us shifted from admiration to surprise. Whispers spread, and her confidence wavered. I could feel the tension as she struggled to maintain control. Eleanor's smile faltered, her voice stiffened, and I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She had always thought she could manipulate the world effortlessly, but here was the first sign of crack in her armor, and I was the one standing across from her. Inside, I felt a rush of satisfaction, a quiet thrill. This wasn't cruelty for the sake of it, it was the first moment I realized my calculated approach worked. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse, I simply let the truth do the work. For the first time, I understood that betrayal could be confronted with patience and strategy, not just emotion. Eleanor had underestimated me for years, assuming I would crumble under her weight. But now, I was in control, savoring a taste of justice that was entirely my own, and I knew this was just the beginning. I never expected love to become another battlefield, but that's exactly what happened. Ethan, my first real love, had been everything I thought I wanted, kind, patient, and genuinely caring. We were building something together, dreaming about the future. Then, slowly, cracks began appearing, and I couldn't understand why. One evening, while going through some old letters and notes my mother had left lying around, I stumbled upon a series of messages between Eleanor and someone close to Ethan. My heart sank as I realized she had been planting doubts, twisting words, and feeding him lies about me. Every misunderstanding that had driven us apart had her fingerprints on it. The betrayal hit me harder than anything before. This wasn't just about words or humiliation anymore, this was about my life, my choices, and my happiness being manipulated by someone who was supposed to care for me. I felt anger, disbelief, and heartbreak all at once. The woman who had already stolen my confidence had now tried to steal my chance at love. But amid the pain, a determination grew. This betrayal showed me the depth of her cruelty and made me even more resolved to act wisely. I realized that if I wanted to protect my life and reclaim what was rightfully mine, I couldn't just react emotionally. Every move had to be calculated, every step intentional. I made a silent promise that night, she would no longer have the power to sabotage my life. Every scheme she had used to hurt me would eventually be turned around, not through rash action, but through strategy. The realization that betrayal could reach into the most personal parts of my life fueled a fire inside me that I would carry forward into every step of my plan. I had thought I had seen the worst my mother could do, but that day proved me wrong. While going through some old family papers, I discovered something that made my stomach drop. Eleanor had quietly sold the house I had grown up in, the place that held every memory of my childhood. My inheritance, everything that was meant to give me a small measure of security, had been erased without a word. Shock and disbelief hit me first. I couldn't breathe for a moment, staring at the documents in my hands. Then anger surged, sharp and consuming. How could she do this? How could she erase my connection to my family's history so casually, as if it meant nothing? I felt a deep betrayal, deeper than anything I had felt before. This wasn't just words or humiliation anymore, this was a direct attack on my future. But beneath the heartbreak, clarity emerged. I realized that waiting or hoping for her to change would get me nowhere. If I wanted what was rightfully mine, I had to act. I had to plan with precision, to make sure she couldn't take anything else from me. This was no longer about proving myself emotionally, it was about reclaiming control. I sat down that evening, heart racing, mind sharp. Every step I had taken so far, the observations, the subtle actions, the patience, was leading to this moment. I understood that this was the turning point. I would not let her greed and selfishness win. I would find a way to protect my inheritance and make her face the consequences of her choices. For the first time, the stakes felt real in a way that made my pulse quicken. This wasn't just about pride or revenge anymore, it was about claiming what was mine, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. I decided to turn the tables in a way Eleanor would never expect. I planned a celebration, a gathering that would seem innocent, just a small dinner with family. In reality, it was the perfect stage for what I had been working toward for months. I had quietly regained the family house, using my savings and careful planning, and I was ready to reveal the truth. The night arrived, and everyone gathered, unaware of what was coming. Eleanor was radiant, full of pride, expecting to be admired as usual. I smiled calmly, greeting guests, letting the tension build quietly. Then, I began to speak, not with anger, but with precision. I shared stories, little truths, and evidence that no one had seen before, how Eleanor had twisted facts, spread lies, and sabotaged people she claimed to care about. I told them about her attempts to control my life, her efforts to manipulate Ethan, and how she had sold the family house without consulting anyone. As I revealed each secret, the room grew quiet. Faces shifted from surprise to disbelief, and finally, realization. I could see her shock, the rigidness in her posture, the way her words faltered as she tried to respond. Then I revealed my final surprise, the house. I had bought it back, turning what she had taken into proof of my independence and determination. The guests murmured, astonished, as I explained how I had used patience, intelligence, and strategy to reclaim what was mine. Eleanor's face paled, and I felt a deep satisfaction. This wasn't just about victory, it was about showing her, and everyone else, that the girl she had underestimated was no longer powerless. That night, I stood tall, proud, and untouchable, watching as the truth unfolded exactly as I had planned. The room was silent. Eleanor couldn't find a word, and I could see the tension radiating from her. My family, who had often overlooked my struggles, was finally seeing me for who I had become. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to astonishment, and in that moment, I felt a quiet triumph that had nothing to do with anger. All the years of feeling invisible, all the nights I had doubted myself, all the times I had endured her words, it all led to this. I realized that my strength didn't come from proving her wrong to her face alone, it came from surviving, from taking control of my life when I could have let her dictate my path. I looked around and noticed subtle nods, whispers of admiration, even respect from those who had once dismissed me. It was the first time I felt fully acknowledged, not because of luck, or gifts, or favors, but because I had faced everything and refused to be broken. In that stillness, I reflected on everything I had endured. All my life, she made me feel worthless, I thought. That night, I finally owned my worth. It wasn't just a statement to her, it was a declaration to myself. I had transformed humiliation into confidence, betrayal into determination, and doubt into proof of my resilience. For the first time, I understood that reclaiming power wasn't about making someone feel small, it was about standing tall in the truth of your own life. That night, the sense of justice was complete, but even more importantly, the sense of self-worth was undeniable. I had not only won, I had become the person I was always meant to be. After that night, my life felt different. I no longer carried the weight of Eleanor's opinions or her constant judgment. Each decision I made, each step I took, was mine alone. I began focusing on my future, investing in opportunities one had once dreamed of but had been too afraid to pursue. Slowly, I built a life that reflected my ambitions, my values, and my independence. The freedom was intoxicating. I discovered talents and strengths I had ignored, buried beneath years of doubt and criticism. I surrounded myself with people who supported me genuinely, who saw me for who I was, not as someone to compare to others or dismiss. I felt lighter, stronger, and more capable than ever. In quiet moments, I reflected on the journey that brought me here. Betrayal had cut deep, but it had also taught me resilience. Cruelty had shaped my strategy, and doubt had fueled my determination. I realized that every painful moment had contributed to the person I had become. Strength wasn't just about standing up to others, it was about owning your worth, even when the world tried to convince you otherwise. And as I looked back, I understood the truth: the people who try to make you feel small are often the ones who need to see you rise the most. Their attempts to limit you can become the very reasons you soar. That night, when Eleanor witnessed everything I had accomplished, it wasn't just about proving her wrong. It was about proving myself right. I smiled, knowing that I was finally free, not just from her, but from the shadows of doubt I had carried for so long. My life was mine, and I intended to live it fully, boldly, and without apology. Do you think I did the right thing by standing up to my mother, or should I have tried forgiving her? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this.